Welcome to week 4 of the short row sleeve cap cal. So this week we are going to look at seaming our panels. You can see here I've got my back panel finished, my front panel finished. Bit of a colour explosion because up in the corner there's something else secret on the blocking mat. So the plan is we are going to seam these panels and we're going to start the short row sleeve caps. So I've decided these are the sides that I want to be the right side. So the first thing I'm going to do is fold them in like that. So you can see up here I've got my tails on the right hand sides of the tops, which is how we know we're looking at comparable sides. So give me a moment, I'll flip it over. I'm going to flip the top onto the front onto the back. Likewise, if you're making the cardigan, you'll just have those two. Make sure you've got comparable sides together so it's all relative. So here we have our front on our back. You can see it's just about blocked to the same level, so these stripes are all matching. You can see we've got our this front looks like it's marginally bigger than the back, but it may just be because the back's dried longer, so it's shrunk in a little bit. So this is where our stitch markers come in handy. I've put them in the last row of that shaping. So the next goal is to seam the sides. So we're going to seam across here, down the sides and down the sides, making sure we leave obviously the underarm shaping open. What I would recommend doing, and what I will do myself because I have to practice what I preach, is just to try to pin it at the tops and sides and then just try the bodice on to check you're happy with the fit. Always a little bit scary, but it's much better to do it now. So if you've realised it's too big or too small or too short, you can make adjustments before you start putting sleeves on. So I've just pinned up the side, so I'm going to sew. And obviously I've got all these ends that I left long just to sew section by section with the different colours. I don't sew my ends, so I'm going to sew the seams, but I'm not going to trim off all the ends until I'm really happy with it. But I'm just going to quickly try it on pinned, obviously being aware that it might be a bit narrower here because I've pinned with a bit of a seam allowance, but just to check we're not way off base and that I'm happy with the fit, then I can go ahead and sew up the sides. So I'm happy with this. It's quite a relaxed fit. Obviously it's very cropped. I wanted it cropped. It's still quite short, but I'm going to put the seam on, so I want it to end up about my waist, which is about here. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Plenty of space, but it's not too big. Okay, let's sew it up. I use a mattress stitch to sew my seams, just as a last tip. I have a video tutorial for that, which I will link in the top right and in the resources section in the comments. So if seaming is not something you enjoy, try mattress stitch. It might just change your mind. I've reverted to showing you this on the rug because that blocking board looked like it was strobing a bit, so apologies. I will try and fix that in the edit. Okay, so I have sewed all the seams using my mattress stitch. I've actually sewed in the ends of where I've changed colours with the stripes just to make it a little tidier, but I've left these ends, I've trimmed them a little where I've seamed the sides. That's the seaming part done. The next part is where the magic happens. So we're going to go on to the sleeve caps. The first thing we're going to do is work a row of single crochets or a round of single crochets around the armhole. Now there's a separate tutorial in left and right handed, which I will link to above right and in the comments, which explains how to crochet the sleeve cap. So I'm not gonna go over that again here, but I do encourage you. It's obviously all written in the patterns, but if you want visual support, then do watch that video. I think you'll find it helpful. What I'm going to explore here is the colour work. Now, this is going to be a bit of an experiment because I've not made these sleeve caps in different colours. So the rough goal, sorry for my shaky camera work, the rough goal is going to be when I work around round of single crochet, and there's a specific number of stitches I need to pick up. I haven't checked the pattern yet, so I haven't got that exact number, but I'm going to colour match working into the row ends. So I'll work in this variegated here, switch to the light pink, and then variegated over and round, and the same on the other side. That is where I'm going to start. Then when I work the short rows, I will work the extensions. So again, in the first short row, which will come up and round to about here, I will work that again colour matching. And then as I extend with the short rows, I will change colours when I get to these sections. I hope that makes sense. That is the theory, and I'm going to show you how I progress. Okay, so here is my first cap sleeve. I'm pretty pleased with this. So I basically followed my plan as I outlined, colour matching these stripes as I worked the first round. So in the sweater pattern, it tells you to work a round of single crochet. In the cardigan, I used extended single to make this first round when working into the row ends. You can actually work either or, so I actually think I prefer the single crochet join. It feels a bit tighter, but the extended single crochet works great too. Second, just to share the way I split my stitches. So I started at the bottom, worked up in this variegated, worked up in the pink, worked up in the variegated, over, changed colour again to the pink, and then back into the variegated, and then I started my short rows working background. And when I worked the short rows, I also did the colour changes. So there's quite a lot of ends, as you can see, but I think it's worth it. So in terms of the split, these are my scribbled notes. So I had 65 stitches to work around here. I fiddled about with the numbers, but here's where I ended up. So it's key to make sure your stitches are symmetrical. So if this is the armhole here, I've obviously got an odd number of stitches, so I'm starting at the bottom. I'm going to work 9 stitches in this first stripe, so there was 10 rows there, 12 and 12. So I've worked 9 in that first one, 12 in the light pink. The reason I worked 12 here is because I want 12 rows here, and basically for each stitch around the armhole you get 1 row when you're working the short rows. So 9, 12 and then 11 in the top. So because I knew I wanted 12 rows of that pink in the middle, I did the 12 stitches, and because the way the sleeve cap works, it didn't matter if I have 12 here, so you've actually got quite a nice little shaping up there. So obviously it's not 12 rows, I think it's maybe 6, maybe less. I can't remember the exact number there, but it doesn't really matter. And then here I've come to the end of the underarm. I've actually worked the first 3 rows of the sleeve here, so that's a setup row. So I worked 3 rows, that took me to the finish of the sleeve cap. And then you can see, if I zoom in, I've got my underarm here, and this is the start of the sleeve. So that worked out really nicely. Obviously your numbers, the way you work around the armhole is going to vary with the size you're making, but that 12 rows, basic 12 stitches, is essentially 1 stitch in each row end. The number of stitches you work round is rarely exactly the same as the number of row ends, so you're not going to be able to work 1 stitch in every row end. But it's not far off on most of the designs, so on most of the sizes. So in a couple of cases right down the bottom where I joined it, instead of leaving a gap, because I had 10 rows here and 9 stitches, I actually worked a single crochet 2 together, just so I didn't have any gaps where I was joining. And you can see there's I can't even remember where I did it now, but do it the same on both sides. Again, it was the same when I worked this section up here. So I hope that is helpful. I appreciate it's niche if you're working in a single colour, but I think it's just quite a useful thing to think about. So when I go to work the sleeve, I've got 6 rows. I'm going to work 6 more rows in this variegated, then switch to pink again. I haven't, however, calculated the total sleeve number of rows, but I will discuss that next week when I have surmounted that. Okay, I'm going to head off and I'm going to work the other sleeve cap. I knew there was one other thing I wanted to say about this. So what I would do differently, remember when we were working the back panel, I carried this yarn up and I showed you how I hide yarn. Now, it's actually carried quite well. I don't know if you can see the inside, but I think if I were to do it again, I wouldn't carry it. It's pretty well hidden. You can't see the, so you can see it a little bit here and, you know, here and here, but it's pretty well hidden. I think I would do the rest like this side. I'd just fasten off the ends and sew them in. But again, live and learn. So I'm nearly at the end of the second sleeve cap. I've just coming to the end of this light pink section and I just wanted to show you how the extensions look. So this is the row I'm coming to the end of here. At the start of this row, or I should say at the finish of the previous row, I slip stitched into those last 2 light pink row ends. So the next time I come back this way, I'm going to be working into these variegated stitches. So on this side, so I've come to the end of the short row, so I've worked that single crochet. I'm going to work the extended single in that pink one, and then I'm going to switch and work my slip stitch in here. So I'm going to join the variegated yarn on the last pull through of my extended single, which I'm going to work into this stitch. Hang on, that stitch there, I've popped the hook in just so you can see it better. So that's my extended single, the last in pink. I'll join the variegated yarn on the last pull through of the extended. I'll work a slip stitch into that stitch, and then I'm going to turn and I'm going to start working the remainder of my sleeve cap in the variegated yarn. So you can see that's how much left I've got of the armhole. My short rows will finish about here, and then I'll start the complete rows, which will turn into the top of the sleeve. Okay, I hope that was clear. If you haven't already seen the short row sleeve cap tutorial, watch that and hopefully that will make a lot more sense. So I've come to the end of all the short rows. There's a lot of ends because of all this colourway, and I'm back to working in rounds. So as I start to work the sleeve, I'm going to work rounds here, but this is the end of the sleeve cap section, and in the pattern we'll move on to the sleeve section, which is next week's content. So we're going to talk about the sleeves, a bit of sleeve shaping and cuffs next week. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to do one more quick fit check and then we're going to crack on with the sleeves. So join me next week for that. If you've got any questions, as always, drop them in the comments or on any of the social posts or the Cal homepage. Okay, I hope you enjoy working the sleeve caps. They're really satisfying when you get done. And I promise they're not as hard as you think they might be. Just take your time, count, use stitch markers, check your right sides and your wrong sides, and you'll be grand.